All right, it's an evergreen topic. So why do I say it's an evergreen topic? It's an evergreen topic because we are constantly, as leaders, trying to find new ways to inspire our team members. Inspiring team members was a hot topic before, during, and now in the current phase of C19, COVID-19. Most people need inspiration. For some of us, we need inspiration ourselves. There was an article by Scott Barry Kaufman, and for those who are interested, let me know and I can share that link with you. It was an HBR article, and Scott Kaufman basically describes inspiration as something where it awakens you to new possibility. It awakens us to new possibilities by allowing us to transcend our ordinary experiences and limitation. So when you want to inspire, you're not just inspiring yourself, but you're also inspiring team members. And that's going to be the focus of the conversation. So I'm giving you a little bit of context from the perspective of what is inspiration. You know, the other thing that I noticed about inspiration is whenever I inspire people, it propels them from a state of apathy. Apathy basically means a lack of enthusiasm, a lack of interest, or lack of concern, to possibility, and transforms the way that they perceive their own capabilities. So you're helping people to move from one state to another. That is also an element of inspiration. Inspiration may also sometimes be overlooked because of its elusive nature. There are no clear constructs as far as inspiration is concerned. Why is this important to A-Star? Well, in A-Star, people are assets. As many of you are managers, leaders, and even some of you are team members, I believe that you are constantly exploring methodologies, how to best inspire, incentivize, and motivate your team members itself. Now, this is to enable them to continue adding value and also contributing to A-Star. The other thing I also want to share with you is that inspiring individuals in the scientific community can be radically different as compared to other faculties and other industries out there. And I'll share with you a little bit more as I progress through the presentation. The other thing is also understanding your team's nuances, habits, behaviors, and even profiles is vital to bringing out the best in your people and your teams, right? So identifying people's profile is a key component in how you can actually draw them out. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that as we move on. Today, I'd like to explore, guys, how we can better inspire team members through interpersonal skills, which is a vital factor from the perspective of trying to inspire and also lead people. Now, there's one thing that you need to know, and I always mention this in many of my webinars and also my facilitation and development session, is that one of the components that you take into consideration is your brain. A vital factor about the brain, which you should keep in mind, is number one, no two brains are the same. So inspiring one person is going to be totally different from how you inspire someone else. We are all inspired and motivated in a different way, all right? Those are the two things which I want to actually put out there as we go through the program itself. Talk a little bit about myself. I guess many of you who are in this session, some of you are already familiar with me, some of you are already connected with me on LinkedIn, but I just wanted to put this slide out there. People, well, for one thing I want to share with you is people are my passion in terms of working with people. I've had the privilege to work with many of you through LOD, and Infuse. Every day I work with clients. I work with clients and people to inspire them, to identify novel solutions and coach them to resilience and also elevated performance. This is my passion. And I've also realized that people are not always that linear. I can't make an assumption. I've pretty much banned the idea about people are linear. People are never linear, especially in working with them. So complexities can arise, And many of the times, people would not agree with what I want to do or what I share with them. And to me, that's totally fine. I adopt and explore the contrarian and maybe even the lateral approach to most of my conversations. So are you comfortable with contrary approaches and lateral approaches when you're actually trying to inspire your team members? That's the position that sometimes I take on. It also helps my brain to adopt a more diverse and flexible approach to helping people become a better self. And that is the role of a leader. If you are a leader and you're seated in this webinar, your role is to help people become better from their perspective. So the role of leader is to inspire and develop more leaders. Let's move on and let me try to find out from your perspective. I've got a question for you that I want to ask you. The question I have is, why do leaders need to inspire? All right. So if I can get you guys to go to www.menti.com, and if you look at the screen, the bottom right-hand corner, it gives you a code. So please go into menti.com, key in that code, and type in the answer to this question. Why do leaders need to inspire? And what I'm going to do at this point of time is I am going to bring out the results for Menti. And let's have a look at what are some of the results that are coming out. I am going to change my screen, new share. Let's see if I can. Okay, so if you could take a few minutes and oops. If you could take a few minutes and type into Menti while I organize the slide here. Why do leaders need to inspire team members? And I'm going to be sharing the screen with you. Here you go, guys. If you go look at the top of the screen, it gives you the address and also the code number 878606. So going to Menti. Why do leaders need to inspire?
Why do leaders need to inspire team members?
Thank you very much. If you think you are off mute, please put yourself on mute. Thank you. I love it. To excel, to lead, to perform. And as most of you are very familiar with Menti, the more frequent a word is used, the more frequent the statement is used, the bolder and the bigger it gets to be. So in this particular case, you're going to see some level of parallels between one comment and the other. But here is the general consensus in terms of why do leaders need to inspire team members. Let's look at some of the responses that's appearing. To keep them motivated, to motivate team members, to encourage to be productive, has a motivation. To supervise. Nice. So look at some of these responses. I see the word guide coming up. I see the word performance coming up. I see the word teamwork coming up. Why do leaders need to inspire team members? The biggest word there, the most popular word there is motivate, followed by performance and also teamwork. Very aptly said, I should say, right? So that's a really, really good point when you talk about why you need to inspire team members. And you're going to discover that inspiring team members is not just a one-time thing, but it's actually a continuous process, right? And I don't want to use the word painful because it gets to trigger people in a slightly different direction, but it's definitely something that you would have to sweat, right? So you have to work really hard for it. So thank you very much, guys, I've got about 44, 45 responses to motivate, to get team members to actually excel. There you go. I've not seen elements of potential, right? You inspire team members to actually unleash their potential. Maybe that's one of the things, but I'm going to leave this question here and to go back to the screen. I'm going to leave this question. And for those who want this Mentee screen will be made available to you after this session. So let's move on to great stuff. Thank you very much, guys. I hear your perspectives as far as why do you as a leader need to inspire. Well, look, I've got a couple of additional questions to actually throw out there and keep populating that Mentee slide itself. Why do leaders need to inspire their team members? What is the value of inspiring team members? Some of you talked about performance. Why do you inspire people around you? Maybe it's not your team members. If you talk about your family members, why do you inspire your family members? So are you inspiring for the same reason, or are you inspiring for a different reason? What do you intend to gain if your team members are inspired? Do you have a goal? Do you have a certain goal that you want to actually accomplish if your team members are inspired? Well, let me talk a little bit about inspirational leadership, or being a leader who inspires. Inspirational leadership, at its core, it's about finding ways to enhance the potential of those whom you lead in a way that works for them. All right? So it's finding ways to enhance the potential of those you lead in a way that it works for them. Inspirational leadership is about inspiring others to push themselves and achieve more and reach that potential that they have. And you realize I've been talking about the word potential, right? The methods by which this is done will vary from person to person. As I mentioned earlier, everyone is different. And business to business. So it's different from business to business too. But the outcome is always the same. If you remember, meeting KPIs, meeting performance, maximizing performance, being able to get people to excel. When people excel, the team excels, the department excels, and eventually the organization excels. Another one reason for inspiring people is to help people develop a greater confidence in what they can do, and applying this confidence in a way that benefits the organization or the team that they work for itself. So those are some of the reasons in terms of why leaders need to inspire. Today's topic, or today's webinar, I've got like 4 things which I want to share with you. For some of you, you may already be familiar, but I can't tell you enough how important it is to constantly reinforce some of these things that we talked about. So these are the areas that I would like to consider in this session. Please do consider to research these topics in depth after this session, not during the session. I will be talking at a high level, but you have the resources available to you to deep dive and gain additional insights and knowledge, all right? So I'm hoping that I can trigger your interest in these topics, which would actually take you to Google, to LinkedIn Learning, and whatever other LMS systems that you have to help you reinforce the topic itself, okay? That's what I'm hoping to actually get done. There are 4 areas. The first one I want to talk about is to understand, estimate profiles of team members. And we're going to use the profile called DISC, which many of you are familiar with. The second one is to develop a goal-oriented communications using the SMART tool. The third one was to apply effective communication techniques. We're talking about verbal and also non-verbal cues. We'll talk a little bit about that. And the last one, the 4th one there, is to develop skills for listening and also questioning. Once again, you know, I'm going to try to share with you some new information. So please stay tuned while you look at this. So what I'd like to do at this point of time is I have a question for you. And what I'd like you to do is I would like you to go into the chat box and see if you can answer this question. I mean, we talked about inspiration, but what is the purpose of leadership? So if you could take a few minutes, I want you to reflect, probably a couple of minutes, or go dive directly into the chat box and also put down what are What are the words that come to your mind when you think about what's the purpose of leadership? Great. Let's look at the response here. Thank you, Anchi. To lead. Oh, there you are. Okay, Prashant, thank you. What's the purpose of leadership? To lead, to inspire, to share, to motivate. Love those words there. All right, Lei Hong, what is the purpose of leadership? And that is to guide people. Kim Ho, I love it. To galvanize people. I love the words that you're using. But the only question is, I'm going to ask you to unpackage galvanize and put in all the different components. And guys, we can talk about leadership because it's a topic that we can talk over 3 days to 5 days. And we do run workshops based on that. Josephine, thank you. Bringing out the best in people. Thank you very much, Josephine. Yes, that is correct. You want to bring out the best in people. Joachim talks about leading the team to a common goal. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Joanne. Provide guidance for the team. And Shah says to bring the team under you to meet the objectives of the company. Peter talks about inspiring, right? So some of us, what we do is we try to take teams from one space to another. We try to take individuals from one space to another. Well, the first question, thank you, Chandra, to drive team efficient. Lovely. You know, I hear a lot of task-based. I hear a lot of tactical approaches, but you also need to remember that we are working with people, guys, right? And when you work with people, you need to lead them. I mean, you are managers. Managers manage resources. You manage the number of people that you have. You move people around to get the kind of results that you need. But today you need to understand that you're not handling robots. All right, we are handling scientists, we are handling individuals, we are handling researchers, and we need to swap that hat and start looking at it from a relational perspective. Well, you know, what's the purpose of leadership? The first question I typically ask leaders is, as a leader, are you inspired yourself? Thank you, guys. Keep that response coming in the chat box. Right? I appreciate that. And anyone wants to share or agree or disagree, put that in. Put that in the chat box itself. I appreciate it. How would you inspire others, right, to get what you are looking for? You know, sometimes I realize that we are waiting for our own bosses and our own supervisors to inspire us. I want to make this clear distinction and assumption today, and that is, if you are in this webinar, you are at least inspired to look for new ways in terms of how you can lead your team members. From the authors of Why Should Anyone Be Led by You, they have stated, they have concluded that the purpose of leadership is to excite others to exceptional performance. And in actual fact, if you go read the book, and I highly encourage you to go read the book, Why Should Anyone Be Led by You? Goffey and Jones. And they actually talk about 4 areas for you to consider so that you can excite your team members to exceptional performance. You know, this is kind of like a mantra. If anything at all you walk away from this session, I want you to think about those 4 key words: excite others, okay? Exceptional performance. If you can excite others, you're going to get exceptional performance. And obviously you need to manage it with all the others in terms of your KPI, in terms of your SMART goals, what you need to accomplish. But the whole thing is about exciting people itself. So there are 4 things that I typically talk about in this context. One is I talk about building communities. All right, so if you have a team, so how do you build a community spirit within that team itself? Don't forget, your people are deeply rooted. they have a deeply rooted desire to belong to a community? Do they feel like they belong to that community or that team that you're working in? So one is building community. Another one, number two, is to demonstrate authenticity. All right, that's what the authors talk about. Why? Because your followers need to see the authenticity in you as a leader. They want you to reveal your human differences. They want to hear your experiences too. So you realize that this whole element of leadership has got a strong bias towards relationship. The third thing is to impart significance. So your people, your followers want to feel important, right? They want efforts. Their efforts are they want to know that their efforts are worthwhile and also meaningful, and they need recognition for their contribution. And the fourth element is to generate excitement. So once again, the first one was to create communities. Number two, to demonstrate authenticity. Number three is to impart significance. And to number four is to generate energy, enthusiasm, and passion so that they can recognize what you're trying to do and what A-Star is trying to do, and they will be also motivated to move forward. How do you do all this? Well, that's going to be a separate topic, but I want to ride based on this mantra that the purpose of leadership is to excite others to exceptional performance. So if anything at all, go bold this, put it somewhere so that you can constantly see this itself. So I want to talk about 5 areas, all right? From the 4 agenda points that I had, there are 5 areas that I want to talk about. Number 1, I want to talk about profiling. All right, I think it's really important for you to understand, number 1, your profile, number 2, your team's profile. So when you know individuals' profile, there's going to be value to it. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a little while itself. The second thing, the second thing that I want to talk about is also developing goals. All right, it's not just about communicating, but also having clear goals in our mind so that we are able to communicate it clearly to our team members. The third thing is, once you have what you want to say, now you need to contextualize it to who you want to say it to. All right, so this is where the profiling came into consideration earlier on. All right. So how do you communicate certain messages? Not just what you communicate, but how do you communicate? I'm getting there, guys. Huh? Just stay with me, and I hope to get this through this whole session. Then you've got listening skills, and we're going to end up by looking at questioning skills. Let's look at the first thing here. Let's do a binary code in the chat box, please. All right. So binary code 1 or 0. If you have done your DISC profile in the past 2 years, please go into the chat box and type 1. Alternatively, give me a 0. I just want to see how many of you have actually completed your DISC profiling. Thank you. Right, I see a lot of zeros in there. Thanks, Andrew. Andrew's the one. Well, I'm seeing that most of you have not done a DISC profiling. Even if you have done any other forms of profiling, you know, one of the things I want to say is profiles. Thank you very much, Cindy and Hung Kyum. One of the things I want to tell you is profiles are an effective way, or profiles are the language of observable behavior, right? So if I can observe a certain behavior, there is a certain profile that's tied to that individual. Our primary style can tell you a great deal of information about why we are motivated, the environments that we prefer, our greatest fears, how we communicate, and how we like others to communicate with us. During your daily routine, guys, as a leader, you see a diverse profile of styles. I don't know how many of you have actually noticed that, okay? I am confident that by now you have seen different profiles unfold right in front of your eyes. Like when things are good, they have a certain profile. When they are stressed out, you see a totally different profile. Well, allow me to share a little bit in terms of this DISC profile, and you guys can go read more if you want in Google itself. Let's start with the D tendency. All right, you can call them tendency, you can call them styles, you can call them preferences, or even profile. Do you know of someone who is assertive, to the point, and wants the bottom line? Some can be very forceful, direct, and even strong-willed. Well, ladies and gentlemen, these are examples of what we call the D style. All right, okay? The next one. And do you have a team member who are great communicators and friendly to everyone that they meet? Some people are optimistic, friendly, and talkative. Well, these are the examples of the I style. If you notice, there's a box that appeared on the top right-hand corner. And I'm going to invite you, and let me just make sure that the slide is active. Give me a minute and let me make it active. Fantastic. All right. Okay, so I've just activated the mentimeter.com. So menti.com. So if you go in there, I would like you to identify, and you don't have to be one specific, either a D or an I. You could just identify two. That would be really great. So as I go through this, and if you see yourself in the profile, I want you to go into Menti and put down which two profile you think you are. I'm going to go to the next one. Then again, guys, do you have team members who are great listeners and great team players? Some are really steady and patient and loyal and also practical. Well, these are the examples of the S style. In other words, they're stable, they're steady, and also really supportive. Last but not least is the next one, which is basically associated to team members who enjoys gathering facts and details and is thorough in all activities. Some of them can be rather precise, sensitive, and also overwhelmingly analytical. So these are the examples of what I would call the compliant and correct, or even the cautious type of a person. So what do you think is your profile? If you think you know your profile, identify at least two of them that you can relate to. Sometimes we can't relate to just one, but we may be able to relate to two. So go into menti.com and put down the profiles that you think you are. And if you think if you are a strong, singular profile, then go ahead and do that too. In most cases, we have all four profiles. Some of them are dominant, some of them stand out, all right? So I'm trying to understand what is your profile. Don't worry about your team members' profile, because in the next step, in the next slide, I'm going to show you how to read your team members' profile. So let's have a quick look on Menti and see where you guys are in terms of your profile. I am loving it. Okay, let me show you what's on Menti. Here you go, guys. So if you're looking at this, amazing, okay? I guess you can see, I guess all of you can see. If you can't see, please make sure you jump into the chat box and tell me immediately. But this is kind of like the distribution. We had like 29 people jump in there and put down what they thought they are. And you can see that this is still increasing. I'm not surprised to have a high density over at the C group or the C preference. And that's because you are a scientific community. But one rather interesting thing that I'm noticing also, that a bigger portion of the population is on C and the S, right? Now the C and the S can be rather passive in their articulation and communication skills. So they're not those who are going to jump up and basically ask question, but prodding people to answer questions is a really important thing. So there you go, guys. This is who you think you are, and I'm going to actually have this available to you. Again, if you want to know exactly who you are, my recommendation is to reach out to certified personnel who can actually get this profiling done for you. Or you're welcome to talk to L and OD and ask them that you want to have it done. And I'm always here to run a workshop for you on the element of DISC. Great stuff. Thank you very much. I'm jumping to my slide now. Let me go back to my slide. Okay. I guess you can see my slide at this point of time. So what is your preferred profile? And you can see what you saw earlier. So let's move on to the second part. So if you know who you are, if you can actually profile who you are, you can take the next step and try to profile the team members that you have. How do you do that? You're going to do this in 3 steps. And here are 3 steps for you. The first step that you do is consider whether this person tends to be more fast-paced or outspoken, cautious and reflective. So you ask that first question, all right? So step number 1, fast-paced, outspoken, cautious or reflective. Step number 2, is the person questioning and skeptical, or are they accepting and warm? Because again, these would tell you, like for instance, in step number 1, it either tells you if they are D or I versus C or S, okay? And once again, guys, if you go back to step number 1, fast-paced and outspoken, if someone is not shy to step up and talk, they're probably someone who's on the active side, which is the D's or the I's. While if they don't want to talk, they're probably on the C's and the S's. Step number 2 is you look at whether they are skeptical, whether they are task-based versus people-based. So the task-based is questioning and skeptical. If they're people-based, they are more accepting and warm. Once you've done step number 1 and step number 2, you're pretty much ready to actually put them into different quadrants, right? You can now combine people's tendencies to determine what is their estimated DISC profile itself. All right, so if you think they're dominant, then probably they have the criteria that's mentioned there on the screen itself. If they're influenced, they're probably fast-paced, outspoken, they are also accepting and warm. If they are steady, they are probably accepting and warm and also cautious and reflective. While if they are conscientious, then you would see that they are questioning and skeptical and cautious and reflective. So this is what I talk about in terms of people reading. Now, yes, you can also get your profiles done online. Just be cautious. This profiling comprises of 3 graphs, not 1 graph. And there are many websites that give you a single graph, right? When they give you a single graph, sometimes you don't know exactly what they're trying to describe. Just remember that if you're doing this profiling, it involves 3 graphs. I'm looking at Peter's question. Any website to test out? Yes, Peter, just go Google. Go Google DISC and you will find many websites that actually help you do this. But obviously it's FOC, right? If you're going to need something that's a little bit more comprehensive and deeper, then I would suggest that you contact someone. I contacted someone who's certified in DISC to actually get this done for you or even your team. Peter, before you move on, let me share with you what I've done as an example. Here you go, guys. We can actually create radar graphs, and this is what I do. I actually help teams, I help departments, and even organizations develop radar graph in terms of where their team members are. Can you imagine, can you see the value of having this radar graph in front of you? You could pretty much predict how someone actually behaves or how you react or how you communicate with that individual, all right? So we are considering, especially right now, how can you be more predictive in understanding people? So if you want to be a leader and you want to know that your leadership styles works with different individuals, it's always important for you to know the profile of individuals or even your team profile. So this was a team profile, and you can see in this team profile, majority of them were in the C's and the S, all right? So again, this is something that you could also do, and this is something that we do as consultants and also coaches for our clients. I'm going to move on, guys. The next part is we talked about communication, right? How do you develop goals so that you can communicate as clearly as possible? Well, the SMART criteria, I think many of you are aware of it, helps you and your team to ensure that goals can be easily understood and eventually implemented. All right. Now, if you want to excite your team members to exceptional performance, got to think about SMART goals. I'm confident that many of you guys are already aware of these common principles. However, many of you still struggle in terms of the framework. Let me just quickly go through them. Being specific helps you to provide clarity in what you are saying or what you want accomplished. All right. So you're setting clear expectations. That's specific. The second component is measurable. Measurable is how you ensure that the precise and accurate outcomes are achieved. When you and your team know what needs to be accomplished, what exactly needs to be accomplished, the desired results are gained, and you realize that your team is moving in the right direction. Action-oriented. I encourage you to start using action-oriented statements to stretch your team so that they have clear and they have in-depth expectation. For instance, you could tell your team members, identify what you specifically need to accomplish, right? Or you could tell them, please go check in with your stakeholders if there are missing variables, and also publish a comprehensive report. So it's about how much of context, how much of information you are actually providing to your team members. It's really important. The next one is looking at relevant or relatable. How are you aligned to A-Star's goals and KPIs? How much are you aligned to your priorities? How do you inspire your team members by asking them about how relevant the tasks are to their goals and aspiration? And the last one there talks about time bound. I feel that the optics are really high. So visibility is always very high with some of the research institutions that function within the context of A-Star. How can you as leaders produce realistic and also practical goals? And not just that, but to follow through so that your team members can accomplish them. So this is just a framework, but it's a really powerful framework in terms of establishing goals and eventually aligning those goals to the different profiles that you have out there. All right. And I'm not saying about compromising your goals and telling different people different things, but it's all about how you're able to deliver the message effectively enough to your team members. So the first thing that we talked about was profiles. The second thing that we talked about is developing goals. Let's go to the next part, which I think is also equally important. And I got to move a little bit faster, guys, because I've got some really good information coming up soon too. Communication model. I guess all of you are familiar with the communication models that is available out there. The sender, the receiver model. And a couple of things that I always talk about are the thoughts that you wish to communicate clear even in your mind. Because if there's lack of clarity in your mind, you're going to realize that the information that gets out there is going to be somewhat ambiguous. All right. Remember the different profiles that I talked about. Certain profiles can accommodate ambiguity, while certain profiles will struggle with ambiguity. right? And you need to actually spend a little bit more time to give them more clarity itself. With ambiguity, there may also be a lack of congruence between the sender and the receiver. As team members, they always strive on clear and logical communication. One of the things I always tell people is our PFC, our prefrontal cortex, which is just behind our forehead, is fussy and starts to give up if there is a lack of clarity and lack of congruence in what is being said. I think the other thing that's also important, which is up there, is your pronunciation and vocabulary, and also positive communication. Choice of verbal and non-verbal cues comes across based on practice and also feedback. I know many of you have practiced keep practicing your verbal and your non-verbal cues. It all depends on how much more, how you get feedback. And over here, I just want to share with you a model that's really effective. I call them the 70-20-10 model, all right? And this model is created by Center for Creative Leadership, and you're welcome to go Google it. What it says is this: 10% is the knowledge and insights that you typically grasp from this webinar or any workshop or any developmental program. All right, 10%. Now, 70% of the learning happens or deepens via actively taking the 10% of knowledge that you have gained, 10% of insights that you've gained, and applying it to your workspace itself. While the 20% of learning comes about from feedback from your coaches, feedback from your team members, and also feedback from anyone else who's willing to give you that feedback. So that's kind of like how you keep improving in terms of your communication skills. So once again, I call them the 70-20-10 model. And there is a detailed research paper published by Center for Creative Leadership, also known as CCL. So please go read that and see if that helps you in terms of your development. So once again, I'm talking about if you are able to develop your skills, your communication skills, and the more effective it is, the more you're able to inspire your team members. The other thing that I also want to share, always remember that when you are applying interpersonal skills, it is about the combination between how you're saying something and what you are saying. Remember the purpose of leadership: exciting others to exceptional performance. The exceptional performance is the potential that you need to unleash in your team members, right? So the thing is, you need to think about how you infuse energy and passion in getting your message across. What are you doing to maintain a high level of excitement, high level of energy with your team members so that they are constantly inspired to continue being passionate at what they do? So the thing is, guys, as leaders, you need to think about how do you help your team members unleash what they already know, right? And some of the scientists that I've met, these guys are really, really good. So think about how can you leverage in terms of their strengths. Let's move on and talk about the next thing. We take another dive. And I'm afraid to take a dive right now because it's already like 10 minutes to the hour. So please be patient with me as I just go through a couple of these pointers. In Julie Starr's work, she found that these tips that helped her to be more effective in communicating, in coaching, and in collaborating with her team members itself. I would like to focus on two of them. One of them is active listening, and the other one is asking questions. Let's take a deep dive into this further. Why is effective listening skills important? So if you get a chance, jump into the chat box and keep typing, but I'm going to keep going on, all right? According to Julie Starr, there are 5 levels of listening. And you are familiar with some of them, I presume, and you probably use them in diverse contexts within A star and outside A star. Let's quickly look at these 5 levels. So one level of listening has a leader. When you listen, this is level 1, all right? You could be talking, someone could be talking to you, and you have not heard a single word. And that is also a form of listening. The second type of listening, you start off listening, but it sparks your thinking about something else, and you miss everything else. So you now have taken the agenda upon yourself, and you have gone into a tangent in terms of something else that has excited you. Thank you, guys. I'm seeing some of you coming in with responses. I appreciate that. Greater listener, greater learner. Very good. Better to understand others. I'm just seeing the responses in the chat box. Let's look at type 3 listening. Type 3 listening, you're fully engaged in the conversation, but you are waiting for a gap so that you can jump right in and put your interests on the table. That is type 3 listening, okay? Type 4 listening. Let's look at type 4 listening. Type 4 listening is you are listening to it all, but you're understanding it from your perspective, okay? While type 5 is the same thing. You're listening to everything, but you understand it from the other person's perspective. I just wanted to share with you a little bit in Mandarin. This is the word for listening. So if you look at the character for listening or actively listening, it comprises of some key characters coming together. And if you can read Mandarin, you pretty much understand to listen. To listen in Mandarin basically means it is to listen with your ears, to listen with your eyes, and also to listen with your heart, right? So the thing is, keep that in perspective. As a leader, you're trying to inspire and you're trying to listen to your team members. Are you listening with your eyes, listening with your ears, and are you listening with your heart? And that's what happens in level number 5. Let me ask you a question. How do you get from level 1 to level 5? What skills do you need to get from level 1 to level 5 of listening? If you could jump into the chat box and share with me really quickly. Thank you, Joanne, for sharing. What skill do you think you need to get you from level 1 to level 5? You want to give it a shot? Practice? Thank you, Shah. You're right, practice, Shah, but what is it specifically? Jeremy, thank you very much. Desmond, thank you very much. Absolutely correct, guys. You need to practice empathy, right? And in practicing empathy, you're right, Jagan, thank you very much. You remove your biases when you practice empathy, listening with your heart, being present, empathy, focus. Lei Hong, it needs empathy, right? And if you want to empathize, let me tell you what you have to listen to. This is what you have to listen to. 3 words, all right? If you want to empathize, and I'm serious about this, empathy starts with listening. If you're not able to listen, it's going to be difficult for you to practice empathy. And in order for you to practice empathy, look for facts, emotions, and needs of what the other person is trying to say. It's a simple combination of FEN. So once again, if you want to be more empathic in your conversations, be it with your peers, with your subordinates, your team members, or even with your supervisor, learn to practice facts. Be able to discern between facts, emotions, and also needs. If I had time, I would have done a little exercise where I would give you a scenario and you would have to break facts from emotion and also needs itself, right? So I'm just going to leave this here with you guys, and I want you to keep that in mind, because when your brain is processing information, your PFC specifically, prefrontal cortex, is processing information, And in an orderly and reliable fashion, you need to listen to all these three components. If you're not able to differentiate, if you're not able to categorize the different information, you're probably going to compromise in terms of your empathy, right? So take note of this, guys. I'm going to move on to one more area, which I think is really important, and that is questioning skills. We talked about listening skills. All right, we talked about listening skills. So once again, we talked about what is leadership. That's how we started. What's the purpose of leadership? We looked at profiling. We looked at forming clear goals, SMART goals. And then we looked at listening skills, actively listening skills. And the last one is effective questioning skills. So if you could go to the chat box and let me know, why is effective questioning skills important? So just jump into the chat box and keep typing in. We have 2 ears and 1 mouth. And all that symbolizes is that you listen twice as much as you talk. All of you are familiar with that. In order to do that, you need to ask effective questions. Thank you very much, Huiru and also Prashant. All right, so asking if effective questions are important. These questions will help you or help your team members, or will provoke their thoughts, or even evoke emotions and the desire to step out and create new actions. Guys, the power of questioning is just amazing. You have to try this. But as you know, it always takes a lot of practice. Asking effective and powerful questions may not always be in the forefront for us trying to resolve problems. Remember 70-20-10. Keep practicing. Get knowledge, get insights, go back, try to practice it. And that's exactly what I did, right? I used to have a list of questions in my book, and eventually I migrated it into my iPhone. So I use those questions to help me trigger more effective questions when I'm meeting with my team members or even meeting with the various clients itself. The other thing, as you can see, questions expand possibilities. They allow your team members to understand the focus and also the intention of what is being asked. It elevates assumptions, guys, from a point of subconscious to conscious level and triggers elements of curiosity. There is also, well, let me share with you that here's a range of questions that you can ask, and I believe many of you are very familiar with this. There is the less effective questions to the more effective questions. Please make sure that you use them appropriately in diverse situations and also encourage dialogue. Take note of the question why. It's got an asterisk next to it, as it may at times be viewed as less positive and more appropriate for debriefing. This is the last part that I want to share with you. I think this is also important if you want to inspire. By the way, those who are putting in the reasons for questioning, I think that's great. Thank you very much, guys. Keep going. The other thing, the last thing that I want to talk about is being directive versus self-directed. All right. And I said, please chat in your chat box. Do you prefer directive communications, conversations, or do you prefer self-directed? Jump into the chat box and put that, just keep chatting in there. Huh? So this is another point for leaders, is to be aware when you need to be directive and also self-directed. Guys, remember we talked about D, I, S, and C. So remember, they may not all appreciate directive-based methods of being managed or being led versus self-directed. Okay, you need to understand that. That's really important. In some cases, if you try to self-direct someone who needs more directive approach, you're going to find that it's going to be a huge gap. All right, and the same, and vice versa. So let me give you an example in terms of directive and also self-directive and how you can move from directive to self-directive. Here's an example that I actually put out here, and you're welcome to have a look at this. So directive could be more instructive. Directive can be more prescriptive, all right? Like telling someone what to do versus advising, seeking people's opinion, or sharing with them a certain observation and asking them to relate to that observation. And maybe asking them to even summarize or asking them what is it that should be done next. So take note of this. This is also another element of communication which you should consider when you're trying to communicate with team members. So I talked about 3 areas that you can look at. You can look at your listening skills. So go back, look at your listening skills. Are you listening more than you're talking? Or are you talking more than you're listening? All right. You can also look at your questioning skills. Asking questions is really important. Trying to understand the origins of a thought that has been described to you. And the third thing is, are you being mostly directive and less self-directive? Knowing the profile and being able to manage the situation is a really important thing, guys. So there you go. Those are the things that I wanted to just share with you. It's 3 o'clock on the dot. I had a couple of questions that Abigail shared with me. Here's one. When there are different opinions from junior and senior team members on technical matters, how do you handle it to encourage junior staffs to keep voicing their opinion and avoid misusing of senior staff's authority? Right? I think this is a great question. By the way, if you have to leave, Farhan, thank you very much. If you have to leave, I totally understand. If you do have questions, please do stay back and ask me this question. Farhan, you got a good question. If you can stay back, I can actually give you an answer to that. All right. But Peter, thank you very much, Peter. Peter talks about innovation how to set goals. Oh, okay. Peter talks about a different thing. I just want to come back to this question. Thank you, Peter, for your question. So this question is to basically one is to give the junior members more airtime to verbalize what they need to do. So I always prioritize. So here's one action. If I'm a leader, I always prioritize airtime for the C's and the S's because they are more quieter, they're more passive. So giving them more opportunity to communicate before even those who belong to the D and the I group. So it's a matter of how you manage these different individuals so that everybody feels comfortable. One other way I also do is, one of the other things that I do is I go have one-on-one with my junior staff, and I would talk to them and I would try to listen to them in terms of the ideas. And if I really like the ideas, I would highly encourage them to bring those ideas during the next meeting. So I spotlight them, guys. All right, I spotlight them during the next meeting in terms of who's got good ideas, and I give them a chance to bring up those ideas itself, okay? So that's one way of actually considering to do that. I'm jumping into Peter's question first. Farhan, you got a long question, but I'm going to jump into Peter's question first. Innovation, uncertainty, and undefined, unmeasurable. How to set goals? That's a great question, Peter. I've been a little bit fortunate to work with Infuse and other RIs. I totally understand this whole thing about uncertainty, undefined, unmeasurable. We need to make them certain, defined, and measurable. You got to understand, some team members, they love to soak in the space of uncertainty, undefined, and also unmeasurable. They love ambiguity. But there are team members who you would find would resist ambiguity. Why? Because if they can't see it, they don't know what needs to be done. So one of the things I would suggest, Peter, is to try to co-create, collaborate with others to come up with what that certainty looks like. So rather than you doing it on your own, Peter, if you have other team members, or if you have key team individuals who can help you curate that idea, curate that uncertainty, the unmeasurable element, and come up with something that's a little bit more certain, and offer that as a solution. Now, here's the thing. We are in a stage of constantly prototyping. I'm sure you have heard many facilitators come up here and say, prototype, prototype, prototype. I'm in a mindset, I'm coming out of COVID. And one of the things that allowed us to be successful is this whole mindset of prototyping. And prototyping and failing early in the process, finding out something doesn't work, quickly making a change and coming out with something else. So Peter, I'm not sure if that answered your question, but be more liberal in prototyping and be more liberal in defining something and then prototyping and making it happen, okay? Farhan, what approach should leaders adopt when their researchers feel they deserve a promotion, but did not receive any in the list? Farhan, I hope it's okay, Farhan, for me to put the question out there. I think it's a rather valid question. What approach should leaders adopt when the researchers feel they deserve a promotion? You know, promotions are not entitlement. My humble opinion, promotions are never a entitlement. Promotion is because you worked hard. You had the opportunities. You made things happen. That's when you're promoted. All right. So I tend to disagree in terms of entitlement, but I'm in a space where I always want to give people an opportunity to excel based on their potential so that they can excel, and my bosses, my supervisors, others can actually see them excelling. And from there, automatically the promotions come about. So you may want to, Farhan, my thoughts for you, you may want to go back to that individual and ask them why do they feel that they deserve a promotion, and how you can actually coach them to work towards a bigger project, a high visibility project, so that they can get more visibility, more optics, and as a result of it, be able to demonstrate their potential. How could leaders employ operant condition for profiling to keep their researchers inspired? Great question. Huh? You can definitely use operant condition, Farhan. But again, you know, so you see, when we talked about, so Peter's question was uncertainty, undefined, unmeasurable. If you can actually demonstrate a certain profile of individual, and in most cases people can relate to that profile, you are not just doing them a service, but you are actually helping them to prepare to go to the next level. People, when they find out what their profile is, then they know what their strengths are, and they start moving in that specific situation. So remember the radar map that I shared with you. I think it's a really powerful tool for you to consider. I mean, think about it. The more information you have about your team, actually the more information you have about yourself and eventually your team members, you get to lead your team members, you get to excite your team members to exceptional performance itself. Farhan, I can actually talk to you a little bit more about this after this session. I want to see whether anyone else has got questions. If you do have questions, please come out and share these questions. I notice I've still got about 51 people in the Zoom room. Any examples of why questions more or less effective? Peter, thank you very much. Peter is asking the question is why questions which are more effective and less effective? I think the why questions apply from a perspective of context. If something has gone wrong, asking a why question, Peter, would be less effective. All right, if something's gone wrong, the question is, how do you get out of it? When you sit down and you debrief, then it's okay to sit down and ask the why question. So I'm not in totality saying that why questions are not good. It really depends on the question. It depends on the context, excuse me. All right. So if you're doing a debrief, you're trying to understand, you're trying to do a post-mortem of what happened, bringing out the why questions to understand exactly what happened and how this can be arrested in the future, putting SOPs in perspective makes a lot of sense. All right. So knowing the context in terms of when to use it would be really helpful. Chandra is asking, where can we find feedback link? Oh, thank you very much for asking the question. Here is the feedback link, guys. So sorry about that. I know I've taken a little bit longer than normal. Here you are. You will find the feedback link here. So please go to the feedback link, scan the feedback link, and please do give us your honest opinion. There's a lot of information. I know I kind of scratched the surface, but this can easily be put into a couple of hours of workshop where you can be learned, or you can be given the knowledge and also the insights to take back to your workplace. All right. Don't forget the 70-20-10 model. Any form of training gives you the 10%, but you have to go back and apply it for the 70% and 20% for the feedback. Justin, can you paste the link in the chat? Justin, do you know how to do that? Let me see if I can. No, I can't do that.
Yeah, give me a minute.
Okay, go for it. All right, Jaslyn is going to copy the link and put it in the chat. Thank you very much, guys, for being here. I really appreciate the fact that you spent time with me. There you are, Rachel. Oh, Rachel has put it into, thank you very much, Rachel. Yeah, Vinod, thank you. Thank you very much. If any of you got questions, you're welcome to reach out to me. Here are my details. All right, reach out to me. There is a LinkedIn QR code. You can go click on that and join me on LinkedIn. And if you have further questions, please let me know. If not, if you want to, thank you, Mela. If you have questions, you want to stay here and you want to chat with me, please do that, because I will be available probably for the next 10 minutes or so. Thank you very much. Thank you. I appreciate it, Joanne. There's more. If you want, there's always more. You're welcome, Joanne. Thanks for your time too.